releasing this video earlier than normal, and at present there are no significant injuries for fantasy football outside of maybe Drew Brees, so we'll jump straight into the waivers. Salvan Ahmed has emerged as the lead back in Miami in Myles Gaskin's absence. You should get a few weeks out of him still, and after this week the matchups get very interesting. Kalen Ballage may not have been rostered in your league come Sunday, thanks to being temporarily put back on the practice squad, and some uncertainty over whether Tremaine Pope would lead the backfield instead. Those fears proved unfounded as Ballage looked fantastic once again. Austin Eckler is expected back in week 12, so you may only get 1 week here, but the matchup against the Jets this week is good enough to make him a priority add. A few guys to check are definitely not available in your league. Damian Harris has proved he is the guy to own in New England, and the offense seems to have turned itself around from the crisis they were having a few weeks ago. Rookie Cam Akers led his backfield in touches this week and continues his slow progress up the depth chart. Naheem Hines was the hot hand for Indy on Thursday night, earning a big fantasy score in the process. At wide receiver, 2 names from last week that proved they should be picked up in way more leagues. Michael Pittman had the breakout game I warned you about. 7 catches for over 100 yards. The Colts have a really juicy schedule over the rest of the season, so Pittman could turn into a wide receiver 2 for a championship-winning roster. KJ Hamler saw 10 targets once again, seeming to cement his position over Tim Patrick for the number 2 on that depth chart. Rookie Jalen Reagor has seen 13 targets in his 2 games back from injury. This team has struggled to find healthy humans to throw to, so even ignoring Reagor's obvious talent, the opportunity is enough to make him a viable fantasy option. Chris Conley looks like Jake Luton's favourite target. While in the last 4 games with Minshew he saw just 2.5 targets per game, he has 8 targets in both of his starts with Luton. He's more of a PPR player, but you'll be able to get him cheap as he hasn't managed to do anything spectacular with those targets just yet. Logan Thomas has 6 targets in each of his last 2 games. It's probably not a coincidence that Alex Smith has been the signal caller in both of these, and with Kyle Allen out for the rest of the season, this might be the norm going forward. It's not exciting, but tight end is a very weak position this year. The matchup for Logan against the Bengals makes him a top streamer this week as well. Dalton Schultz is probably the only other name of interest. In the 2 games before the bye week, he had 15 targets. The unknown situation at quarterback makes this a little shaky, but against the Vikings there should be plenty of opportunity for him regardless of who is throwing him the ball. This really isn't a week to be streaming a quarterback if you can avoid it. My number 1 option is Matthew Stafford, who is fairly well owned. Excluding the game he got knocked out of, the last 2 games he's been over 20 points, and over 16 in all but 1 game this year. So he has a safe floor, and the Panthers get beaten through the air rather than on the ground. Weather has been a big issue in streaming quarterbacks lately, so here is a pick from a dome matchup. Phillip Rivers has at least 16 points in 3 of his last 4 games, with the one exception being against Baltimore. Against the Packers this week, it's not the best matchup, but it'll likely be high scoring, forcing Rivers to throw a lot more, and you should at least get to that 16-point baseline. Do you like living life on the edge? Are you one of the many hopping off the Drew train? Look no further than Jameis Winston, who looks likely to be starting for New Orleans this week. In his time in Tampa, he proved to us that being a bad quarterback is fine for fantasy football. He's now on a better offense with a great matchup at home against the Falcons. The Minnesota Vikings host the Dallas Revolving Quarterbacks this week. Don't overthink this one. The Cowboys are giving out the most points to fantasy defenses over the last 4 weeks. Another easy one, the LA Chargers take on the New York Jets. Enough said about that. Finally, I know they're quite widely owned, but pick up the Miami Dolphins if they are out there. They are the number 1 defense over the last 4 weeks. They have Denver this week and the Jets the week after that. Firstly, if Younghoe Koo has been dropped in your league for the bye week, he is the number 1 pickup. He was the joint first kicker in the 4 weeks leading up to the bye with 45 points during that time. He now has 5 straight games in a dome, so you can pick him up and ride him all the way through to week 15. Kaimi Fairbairn is likely available as he's only been in a dome once since week 5, leading to some very disappointing scores in that time. He's back at home playing the Patriots, who have given up the most points to fantasy kickers over the last 4 weeks. Mike Badgley has been up and down this year, but averages around 8 or 9 points at home. This week with the Jets coming to town, he should get plenty of opportunity to hit above that average.